Conference crunch as we talk about the 2026 Memphis football season as we look at a Tiger team that is under a new regime. We recently discussed the Arkansas Razorbacks and how they are also under a new regime as well. So when you look at this Memphis football team, what can happen in year one? What can take place in what really is a very intriguing team? If you look at Memphis they've got the new FedEx deal that just came out recently, as well as many. But welcome into a special episode of Conference Crunch, live from the Athletic Brewing Studios. If you're looking for the incredible taste of beer without the hangover and lasting effect, if you want to get up and be sharp in the morning for all that you do, head to athleticbrewing.com now. They've got incredible tasting buds that you can buy nationwide. Memphis Football 2026 looks more like an expansion team than a normal year one rebuild. You've got a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, heavy roster turnover, and a schedule that doesn't really give you very many soft landings. So the question of the show, and it's scrolling on the bottom of the screen if you're watching, but it says, can Memphis actually, quote, close the gap in 2026, or is this just a survival year for the Tigers? When I say gap, I'm talking three different levels. The gap between Memphis and the top teams in the American, like a Tulane, like a South Florida, like a North Texas type teams that have lived up near the top, Navy, Army. Number two is I'm talking about the gap between Memphis and other G5 playoffs hopefuls, such as Boise State, UNLV, and Liberty. Then you look at other teams across other conferences, Sun Belt as well. And then, lastly, you've got the gap between Memphis and that 12-team playoff bracket that everybody is now clamoring over. Now, lay all that against the 2026 season schedule, and here's what we know. On August 29th in Week 0, Memphis will open up for the first time ever in Week 0 as they travel out to Las Vegas to take on Dan Mullen and UNLV. September 5th, Memphis comes home to take on Arkansas State. On the 12th of September, Tigers head out to Boise State, first time ever, as they take on the Broncos on the Smurf turf. Then on September 19th, Tigers travel back home as they host the Skyhawks of UT Martin. Next week, Memphis gets into conference play as they head out to Charlotte and take on the 49ers. Following week, on the 10th, Tigers come home, take on UAB in what could be a revenge game from last season. Then on October 16th, the following Friday, the Tigers head down to Tulane on a Friday night game to take on the Green Wave. Then short week, back-to-back short week, is October 22nd, the following Thursday. The Tigers are at home to take on East Carolina. And then Army is back on the schedule as Halloween. Army comes to Memphis to take on the Tigers before the Memphis Tigers head down to South Florida to take on Brian Hartline and the new-look South Florida Bulls on a Thursday night game on November 12th. And then November 21st, Memphis travels up to Navy. Last time they went up there, they got them early in the season. Now they get them late in the season. Going to be a very interesting matchup. We'll get into that deeper as the season rolls on. Then on November 27th or 28th, one of the two, Memphis will host Temple to close the year. So that's two true road games early on at UNLV at Boise. The first road trip to Tulane in mid-October is a program that, as we know, has been at or near the top in the American for many years. And then you've got weeknight games against East Carolina and South Florida, which puts you in those national windows that Memphis has been clamoring for many, many times, and I talked about it. A late season road game at Navy, triple option, and you close out with Temple. Memphis is in a fascinating spot for 2026. You've got a big city brand. You've got a real history of explosive offense. You're not in the SEC or Big Ten, which still dominate TV and playoff attention. But if a place like Memphis can't climb in this new playoff world, that's a message for a lot of non-P2 fan bases that are not going to want to hear. Question of the day, it's up on Twitter. 2026 Memphis football season is a success if, this is your baseline, 8+ wins, make a bowl, clearly improve, beat the top AAC teams on the schedule, or find a real core for 2027-2028. Head over to X, now at 4-Star Sports M, to retweet, give us your answer and your reasoning why. Coming up, we'll talk about why this roster feels like an expansion team and how that might actually be the only way Memphis could jump a tier instead of being stuck in a permanent 7-5, 8-4 land. All right, let's talk about the roster. Before graduation transfers out and transfers in, Memphis is looking at, between graduation, transfers in and transfers out, Memphis is looking at a 2026 roster that feels, like I said, much more like an expansion team. You're remodeling everything, including a stadium, but you're also resetting leadership and building chemistry, essentially, from scratch. What is the upside to this? Well, you've got a new staff that isn't fighting this is how we used to do it. Every spot is wide open. Everything is earned. Nothing is inherited. And because of this, you can build a locker room in your image from day one if you're a new Memphis head football coach, Charles Huff. Now, what is the downside? The downside is September football will probably look a little bit messy. You may have a few blown protections, missed checks, maybe some miscommunications. But you're also asking guys who haven't been together that long to function like a veteran team in what is going to be some tough environments. But this is where the sport of college football is now at. Essentially, every season, your roster is a new startup. You've seen it at extreme with programs like Colorado and on a smaller scale with a bunch of G5 teams and Big 12 as well. But you look at Memphis, and they're now firmly part of the same experiment as well. The math? Well, it's very straightforward. If a high percentage of your portal and new additions hit, you can get good really fast. Don't believe me, look at what Kurt Signetti just did at Indiana. And if they don't, things can unravel very, very quickly. So, what actually counts as success in that context? So let me ask you this. If in 2026, what matters more for the Memphis Tigers? Total number of wins? Or who those wins are coming against. If you're an A person, you just want Saturdays to feel good again, stack 7, 8 wins, get to another bowl. Don't overthink it. Just continue on. And if you're a B person, you want to be able to say, hey, we beat Boise, we beat Tulane, we knocked off the top American brands, we look like we belong at the top of the league, which is something we haven't seen. My definition of success for 2026 for Memphis looks like this. Bare minimum, you make a bowl. 5-7 should be the absolute bottom of the barrel. Really more 7-5, but we'll say 5-7 should be absolute bottom. You have to clearly look better in November than you do in September. And that's offensive, defensively, special teams, and from a staff perspective. And I think you have to walk out of this season coming up with knowing without doubt at all, with certainty, that roughly 10 to 12 players are going to be your backbone for 2027, 2028. And I say that because coming up, if you're going to live with this kind of turnover, there's one thing that has to be non-negotiable, and that's your identity, especially on offense. We'll talk about what Memphis needs to feel like on Saturdays if they want a puncher's chance at the playoff. So we just talked about the schedule. Let's go look at it again. A neutral site field opener at UNLV in Las Vegas. Trip to Boise in week 3. Friday nighter at Tulane down in New Orleans. Thursday night games, East Carolina, and on the road at South Florida. Not an easy place to play. And then you got the late November trip to Navy as well. You need an offensive identity that travels to weird environments and on weird days of the week. What does that need to look like for the Memphis Tigers? Well, A, they have to have tempo. You have to stress teams not only vertically, but also horizontally. And we don't know who the quarterback is going to be, but giving the quarterback simple, defined answers versus the coverages that you see. You have to continue to put the quarterback in a successful situation in order for this team to be successful, especially the Kevin Decker offense. And finally, you have to create high percentage explosive plays instead of asking guys just to win one-on-one every snap. Memphis has to get back to that explosive offense and defense for that matter, but specifically offensively, they have to get back to creating those high percentage explosive plays. And in the portal era, a clear offensive identity is an absolute cheat code. It makes it easier for you to plug in new quarterbacks, receivers, and running backs every year. It also, more importantly, gives recruits and transfers a clean picture of what they're signing up for. And in today's day and age, transparency is key. And it gives you a TV personality beyond just your record. Yes, record is important, but style is still a choice. For the next 3 years, if you had to pick, would you rather Memphis be a top 20 offense in constant shootouts with a volatile defense when you're living in that 41-38 range? Would you rather be a top 40 team on both sides that wins ugly sometimes and doesn't really self-destruct? Well, if you choose option 1, you've been there. It's classic Memphis. Points, fireworks, upset potential. But option 2 is the grown man version. Fewer viral moments, more 9-3, 10-2 seasons, and fewer cliffs. Personally, I lean more into Memphis with the high-octane offense, but you have to have defensive traits and you have to have an identity on defense as well. Whether it's scoring, whether it's forcing turnovers, being nasty in the red zone, whatever it may be, because as a team that's not in the Power 2, your best path to the playoff conversation is either to be explosive on offense so you can knock off big brands in single games, or stack enough 9-3 season with real wins to make it where you become unavoidable, not just for the college football playoff, but also for potential recruits and conferences in the future. Because recruiting wise, both paths work. Offensive players want production, they want touches. Defensive players want to know they won't be hung out to dry, and that scheme can put them on NFL radars. A strong and honest identity gives you talking points in both of these rooms if you're the Tigers. Coming up, we're going to zoom all the way out and talk about what the Memphis 2026 season will say about the entire sport. Because a lot of fan bases are watching this experiment, whether they want to admit it or not. Put everything together. Memphis is a proof of concept. It's a roster that feels closer to an expansion team than a normal year one rebuild. It's a new staff, modern offensive philosophy. It's a schedule that gives you a very intriguing early group of 5 games, and then you get into conference schedule and you've got some weird, wacky days and nights. Memphis is basically a lab for every fan base outside of the Big Ten and the SEC. Why do I say that? Because if it can work at Memphis, if Memphis can continue to get to a bowl, continue to show real growth, and build a core that looks good enough to chase an AAC title, something they haven't done, potentially a playoff bid in a year or two, it proves that non-Power 2 programs still have a lane in this sport. But if it can't work here with Memphis, with the city, with the brand, with the history, then a lot of schools in similar spots are going to look at the 2026 Memphis and say, hey, if they can't climb, how are we supposed to? And for Memphis fans, they also have to answer a hard question. Are you okay being the stepping stone, where not only players come, blow up, and leave, but so do coaches? This is now the 4th consecutive coach that you've had to hire because your previous coach has left for another position. Or is the standard now that you keep enough of these guys and you can keep these coaches to make a real run? Now, you look at Ryan Silverfield, he was there for 6 years. Charles Huff comes in. How long will Charles stay? It's a question everyone's asking. As I've stated before, if Charles Huff comes in and you look and Charles Huff goes to a P4 position, that probably means Memphis won the American and went to a college football playoff. And if you're a Memphis fan, you cannot complain. That's what you've asked for. That's been many people's bottom level. Their basement floor is a college football playoff. But in a few years, we're going to look back at 2026 and say one of these 2 things. That's the year that Memphis really started to climb in this new era of college football. Or we're going to say that's when we started to realize that maybe the climb that everyone wants could potentially be rigged. The bad thing is there's not much middle ground. So hit that question of the day. 2026 Memphis season is a success. If, quote tweet it with a full sentence, tell me whether you're a wins person, a who we beat person, or a build the core person. And if you haven't already, go back and check out other special episodes we've got over at 4star.live from right here inside the Athletic Brewing studio, athleticbrewing.com. Great taste without the effect. You look across the country, there's other programs across the country that are similar to Memphis. But Memphis is a non-power 2 test case. And it's a pretty good snapshot, pretty honest snapshot of where college football is really heading. Once again, folks, this has been a special episode of Conference Crunch as we break down the 2026 Memphis Tigers football season. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hit that subscribe button. And if you like what you see, like what you hear, tell your friends. Head over to 4star.live. Also, head to Discord. We've got our links everywhere. We've got Discord posts going out daily and nightly on all things Memphis Tigers. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time, folks.